summoning a true savior!
To start off with kind of a softball question, take us back to the beginning. What inspired you to want to tell this story?
It found me. It tracked me down. It was not something, I didn't know Dietrich's story. I'd read a book of his, The Cost of Discipleship, when I was in my early 20s. But, 30 years later, I had no connection to him. And the story came to me as a possible rewrite job. And I said no to rewriting it. I caved because they let me start from scratch. And I got a clean slate. And then I said no to directing it for over a year. Dietrich is one of those people that once you meet him, you can't get him out of your mind. So I really feel that this only happened because it was supposed to happen. And I just feel deeply honored that I got to not only meet Dietrich, but to tell his story, because I think it is clearly a story, not just for all time, but for our time right now. His level of courage in a life and death situation, I think we're in emergency times here too.
I have to transition to the amazing cast. Clarke, what attracted you to this story?
The title, when it was first introduced to me, it was called God's Spy. And I thought, that's very interesting. And I'd like to be God's spy. So given the role of Mr. Powell, of Reverend Powell, I grew up with his son in New York. I was a child, but he was very much in the politics of New York, and particularly Harlem, where I was born at the time. So it felt like I had a hook into him. I have to agree with Todd. Sometimes things just draw you to a place, and you need to respond accurately and surrender to it. This isn't about anything else besides your faith in something greater than yourself. And don't be afraid to say it. It's an important piece. I hope I have answered your question.
You did, yeah. Blu, I want to extend the question to you. An editor, usually comes in after the film is finished. What enticed you to the story? Was it just, here's the movie, be here on Tuesday, or?
Well, Todd called me and he said, I'm making a movie, you want to be a part of it? And I said, absolutely, let's do it. And I had read the script before, it was a beautiful script, so I was in from day one.
Todd, to go back to you, your first movie that you directed in 2003 is also about World War II and that time period. What is it about the era that you keep coming back to?
Well, this is one of the reasons that I said no to directing Bonhoeffer, because I thought the town is going to think, this guy's not that interested in directing, but every 2 decades, he's got to make a World War II film. Wait till I see you guys in 20 years with another war movie. I've really avoided it because I don't want to be stuck in a rut. So I don't know if I was drawn to World War II as much as I was drawn to this idea of relentless courage. I was so struck by this guy who was really cocky. I was very cocky as a guy in my 20s, but what were the stakes for me? Nothing. For these guys, they woke up and found that their country had been stolen and nobody was doing anything about it. So this one guy took his cockiness and his certainty and traded his whole life in to do the right thing. It didn't matter that it was World War II. I had to tell his story.
Clarke, your character could, I think, in any other movie just kind of be a throwaway, just a character that pops in and out and that's it. But you bring such gravitas to the performance and really create someone that is lived in and you understand how he's inspired our main character. How did you get into the creation of Reverend Powell? Did you do research, or how did you enter into that headspace?
Reverend Powell came through a time in America's history called Reconstruction. And as far as preparation goes, all one has to do is take a look at a history book and compare that time to the time that we're living in. Move from there. It was easy to see what motivated him. It was easy to see because of the Abyssinian Church and how important it is to the black community, how the struggle the struggle for your divinity, for your soul, for what is correct, doesn't have a color. Just like hate does not have a color. Love does not have a color. But it is your willingness, or I could see it with him, and also with his son. I mean, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. was a force to be reckoned with. You know, he wasn't, as they say in England, backwards and coming forward. You know, to answer your question, it was just a matter of looking at and feeling for Clarke, you know, coming through the 60s and all of that kind of stuff, how to use his life, Todd's words, Bonhoeff's story, and just be in the moment and be in the truth of that. You know, hopefully that worked.
I think what is interesting, and I want to throw this question to Blu, you know, I always say editors do not get enough love for the work that they have to do in creating a pace, you know, and there's so much going on in this movie's 2 hours and 11 minutes. You know, you have the early exploration, there's an assassination attempt, of course, the final moments. How did you go about setting the pace for this movie? How did you start the editing process?
Really just take it one scene at a time. Really just focus on that scene and make it as powerful as it could be and move on to the next. And then when Todd and I started working together, I think that's when we really started working on the pace together, and when what we wanted to open the film with, where we wanted to start the story, how much of Dietrich's childhood did we want to put in, and just keep it moving and keep people interested and keep the heart of the story alive as it went on.
Was there a moment in the movie that was challenging for you in the edit?
I don't think there was
Oh,
much.
come on, tell the truth.
Which one?
I'll answer
which
this
would
question.
you? Okay.
No, so
For me, there wasn't.
That's so not true. The communion scene at the end, we shot in real time, and so it was about 14 minutes long.
You're right.
And you're here at the end of the movie, and you need to capture something that brings everything together: the complication of the Nazi, the acceptance of the friendship, the faith of an atheist, the Russian gentleman who actually asked them to be his pastor was an atheist, and he was so moved by his time with Bonhoeffer that he said, could you do this one last thing for us? That scene only works because of Blu. Getting to work with him on Sully, yeah, the movie is exciting and thrilling, but the reason that movie works is not because of the stuff that you can notice in the editing. It's just the way people talk to each other, the gentle ins and outs, the invisible editing, and he specializes in it. And I'm just so blessed that he was my guy.
There's so many different characters. Everybody's giving such committed, great performances. How did you find Jonas? How did you find your Dietrich?
Well, since we're talking about acting, I want to circle back to Clarke, and then I'll tell you about Jonas.
Go for it.
You talked about maybe the size of a role, the impact that this reverend had on history, and this story being untold, the fact that this church, this man, actually was the birthplace of Dietrich's soul. And that soul went home with a new lens to see the world, both as a person filled with love and then as a person who could recognize what was happening to the Jewish people in Germany. That changed history. This 27-year-old got up and threw the Nazis out of a church and had a target on his back for 12 years and was warning England and warning America for 12 years about what was happening. That happened because he met Powell, that he met the people of the Abyssinian, that he saw real love, real faith, passion. So I look at the depth of the performance, not only in the words, but in how you can meet one teacher, one person, one stranger, and everything is different forever, and how that cycles out in all aspects of your life. So really the miracle and the force that this guy carries because of what Clarke brings allows us to see the magnitude of Powell's impact in history and the Black American church impacting world history. And it's so important, it got forgotten. It's not been talked about before. So I really wanted to underline that. The Jonas story is just a sweet little short, funny story. I knew one German filmmaker. Her name is Emily Atef, kind of a Cannes film favorite. And so I asked her, I need to do casting. Can you tell me the 10 best German actors from 25 to 35? And she wrote back, Jonas Dassler. And I said, actually, thank you, but I need a list. And she wrote back, he is the list. And he is. He's the list.
We're unfortunately out of time. I'm very bummed because I had more questions. But let's give this amazing group a round of applause.
Thank you, beautiful people.
Indeed.